The sheriff knocked on Maria's apartment door at 7:14 a.m. She opened it to find two deputies and a white transport van.
Sheriff? At this hour? What could they possibly want?
Ms. Vance, we have a court order for a 72-hour emergency psychiatric hold. You need to come with us.
A hold? For what? Let me see that paper.
Allegations of paranoia and erratic spending filed by your parents. We are just executing the order.
That is a lie. There is a trust. My aunt's trust. The documents are in my drawer. Bring them.
A deputy retrieved a manila envelope from her desk. Then they walked her to the transport van, neighbors peering from windows.
They filed this 11 days after I inherited. This is not about my mental health. It is about the money.
The van pulled away from the curb, carrying her toward Riverside Behavioral Health and a 72-hour clock that her parents had already started. At intake, a nurse stamped her file with a red 72-hour hold and pointed her toward the locked unit. The evaluation had begun. They led her into a small intake room. Cold fluorescent lights. A nurse pointed to a chair. The nurse asked if she had been feeling paranoid or suspicious of family members.
Paranoid? That was their trap. They weaponized the language of psychiatry to steal from me. I'm not paranoid. I inherited a trust from my aunt. My parents want control. The documents are in my file. Please look at them.
The nurse glanced up, her expression unreadable. She said the doctor would decide what evidence was relevant.
A doctor. Someone who might actually read the file before deciding I was crazy. Maybe a sliver of hope.
Outside, a nameplate on the doctor's office read Dr. Christopher Allen. He was the attending psychiatrist assigned to her evaluation.
Will this Dr. Christopher look at my trust documents? He needs to see them.
The staff member shrugged. He sees whatever's in the file. Then the heavy door of the ward locked behind her. Maria sat in the quiet ward, the 72-hour clock ticking, her fate now resting on a psychiatrist she had never met. 11 days earlier, Maria sat in a lawyer's office listening to the last will of her Aunt Margaret. The room was warm, the air still. The attorney unfolded the trust document. On its cover, embossed in gold, were the words, "Last Will and Testament of Margaret Vance." When the figure of $1.8 million landed, the silence in the room grew heavy.
$1.8 million. Aunt Margaret had been a librarian. How did she?
That can't be right. She was on a fixed income. There must be some mistake.
No mistake. She's the sole beneficiary at 22? That's irresponsible.
A framed photograph of Aunt Margaret sat on a side table, a woman with kind eyes and a knowing smile, as if she had anticipated this moment. The attorney continued reading. The trust contained provisions to protect the assets from any undue influence. Maria's hands tightened on the papers.
They were already furious. Not at the gift, but at the control it gave me.
As they left the office, Robert muttered something about needing a second opinion. Linda's heels clicked sharply down the corridor. The plot had begun. Hours later, a nurse handed Maria an emergency petition for conservatorship signed by her parents.
Emergency conservatorship. They want control before the hold even ends. I need Dr. Christopher. The hearing is in 3 days. He's the only one who can stop this.
The nurse paged him. Dr. Christopher was the attending psychiatrist, quietly respected. In his office, he reviewed Maria's file. The allegations seemed thin. He noted the trust documents. He walked to the ward. The heavy door buzzed open, and he entered Maria's room.
Dr. Christopher, before you ask me anything, read the trust documents. They'll prove I'm not crazy.
I'll review everything. But first, tell me why you think these allegations were made.
Because I inherited a trust, and my parents want control. They'd rather have me locked up than let me keep it.
The wall clock ticked. The first hour of evaluation had begun, and a blank rebuttal waited. Dr. Christopher sat across from Maria, asking standard clinical questions. Her answers were measured, precise.
Have you been spending large sums of money recently?
Normal expenses. Groceries. Rent. I haven't touched the trust. They twisted a routine purchase into erratic spending.
And the paranoia? Your parents claim you've been accusing them of plotting against you?
Should I say it outright? They are plotting. but that would sound exactly like paranoia. I asked a financial advisor for a second opinion on the trust. They saw that as suspicion. It's reasonable, not paranoid.
He leaned back, making a note. Her logic held together. Then a commotion in the hallway interrupted. At the nurse's station, Linda Vance demanded immediate access to Maria's room, her voice sharp and carrying.
We filed the conservatorship. She's a danger to herself. You have no right to keep us from our daughter.
Dr. Christopher stepped out, observed the scene, then quietly returned to his office. The trust file lay unsealed on his desk, its pages unread. The next morning, Dr. Christopher phoned Maria's former therapist at the county clinic.
Has Maria ever shown signs of paranoia or delusion?
The therapist's reply was clear: no history. Maria had been stable, even under family stress. He then dialed the financial advisor Maria mentioned. The advisor confirmed routine guidance, nothing reckless. In the afternoon, he conducted a second interview. Maria's composure had not wavered since admission.
When I was 16, they opened credit cards in my name to teach responsibility. They maxed them out.
A pattern of financial manipulation. That fits the history.
He compared the parents' allegations line by line against the evidence. The discrepancies grew harder to ignore.
If even half of this is true, this hold is a weapon, not a treatment.
He reached for the trust file still unsealed on his desk and opened it to the first page. Page 1 laid out standard trust language, beneficiary designation, asset summary. Nothing unusual. He turned to page 2, and then his hand stopped moving. Halfway down the page in plain type was a section listing the co-trustees, and a name he knew intimately. Co-trustee, Dr. Christopher Allen, appointed by Margaret Vance on this date 11 years prior.
That's me. That's my name. Margaret appointed me before I ever met Maria.
He sat back. 11 years ago, he had signed those papers and forgotten them. Now they had surfaced like a life raft in a riptide. In her room, Maria stared at the same wall clock, unaware that a stranger had just become the one person who could save her.
The parents submitted this trust as evidence of mismanagement, but it's the opposite. It's her shield.
He flipped to the anti-coercion clause on page 4, highlighted years ago. Aunt Margaret had prepared for exactly this. The 72-hour observation was now a trap reversed, and he was the hinge. He reread the anti-coercion clause. Any attempt to pressure the beneficiary into surrendering control triggered an automatic transfer of all assets into an irrevocable spendthrift trust.
That's what they were after. Not just control, activating this clause so they could argue Maria was unfit.
He spread the parents' submitted evidence across the desk, receipts, emails, a one-page evaluation from a family doctor.
Every piece tailored to paint her as paranoid and reckless. They almost made me their instrument.
He checked filing dates. The hold was sought 11 days after the will reading before Maria had received her first trust statement.
Premeditated. They didn't wait for evidence, they manufactured it.
2 obligations pressed on him. As psychiatrist, complete the evaluation with unimpeachable rigor. As co-trustee, protect the trust from coercion.
No conflict. Both roads demand the truth.
He slid a fresh legal pad forward and wrote at the top, "Rebuttal to petition for emergency conservatorship." Page by page, he began dismantling each allegation with documented facts, clinical findings, and the trust's own provisions. That evening, Dr. Christopher returned to Maria's room carrying his notes and the trust file. She looked up, exhausted but steady.
I've read the trust. I believe you. None of your symptoms match paranoia or mania.
You believe me?
The evidence is clear. I'll complete the evaluation with full rigor and document everything.
He's not just humoring me. He's actually on my side.
Over the next day, he completed the full 72-hour clinical battery: cognitive tests, mood inventories, risk assessments. Maria scored in normal ranges across every measure. The final checklist confirmed: no psychosis, no paranoia, no danger. He cross-referenced each finding with the parents' allegations, highlighting contradictions line by line.
This isn't a clinical report anymore. It's a counter-lawsuit in public health form.
By the morning of the hearing, he had drafted 13 pages. The 14th would carry his signature and fiduciary seal. He slid the signed rebuttal into a manila envelope, attached his co-trustee documents, and sealed it. A rush courier took the envelope from the hospital loading dock at 8:42 a.m., 2 hours before the conservatorship hearing. A nurse delivered a copy to Maria. She sat on her bed and read the words that could free her.
This is more than a defense. It's an indictment of everything they tried.
In his office, Dr. Christopher opened a new letter and wrote to the State Bar Association. He described the false statements in the petition, naming the attorney who had filed them. That attorney, Malcolm Shaw, was at that moment reviewing his notes, confident of an easy win. In Maria's room, the clock read 10:15. The hearing was beginning. The envelope landed on the judge's clerk's desk amid a stack of morning filings. It was marked urgent but unopened. The bailiff called the case. Maria's parents took their seats, their lawyer adjusting his cuffs. None of them knew what was already in the building. Judge Harris took the bench, gavel in hand. The courtroom fell silent.
Your Honor, the petitioner has reasonable cause to believe Maria Vance is a danger to herself and incapable of managing her finances.
Shaw listed the allegations: paranoia, erratic spending, suspicious accusations. His tone was smooth, clinical. Linda Vance sat rigid, her expression a mask of concern. Robert nodded along with each point.
I have the petition. Was this psychological evaluation conducted by a neutral third party?
Before Shaw could answer, a court assistant approached the bench holding a sealed manila envelope marked urgent. The judge slit the envelope and drew out a thick sheaf of paper. He began to read. The first page carried a professional letterhead, Riverside Behavioral Health. Below it, the words Rebuttal to petition for emergency conservatorship. His eyes moved down the page, then his face hardened into stone. He set the document down. The gavel hung in the air as he stared at Malcolm Shaw. This court will recess for 30 minutes to review new evidence. 30 minutes later, Judge Harris gavelled the courtroom to order. His face gave nothing away.
Mr. Shaw, the court received a rebuttal from the attending psychiatrist. It states your evidence contains false statements. Care to explain?
Your Honor, I was not aware of this document. My clients assured me.
The evaluation finds no signs of paranoia, no psychosis. It also names a co-trustee who was assigned to protect the very assets you claim are mismanaged.
That's impossible. Our daughter is ill. This psychiatrist is covering for her.
The gavel slammed down, cracking the air. Silence followed. The emergency conservatorship is denied. This petition was built on false statements. Ms. Vance is to be released within 36 hours. Court is adjourned. A nurse entered Maria's room. The hold is lifted. The judge denied the conservatorship.
It's over. They can't touch the trust, now. He really did it.
Malcolm Shaw gathered his papers with shaking hands. The judge had ordered a copy of the rebuttal forwarded to the State Bar for review of attorney conduct. 36 hours after the ruling, Maria stepped out of Riverside Behavioral Health into a cool, overcast morning.
I asked to speak with you before you left. The trust had a provision your parents didn't count on.
What provision?
An anti-coercion clause. Any attempt to pressure you into surrendering control triggers an automatic transfer into a spendthrift trust.
He turned the page and pointed to his name, still inked beneath the trustee declaration.
I am that co-trustee. Aunt Margaret appointed me 11 years ago. I didn't know it would ever matter.
He's the reason I'm free, and now he's my protector.
She signed the amendment that morning. All 1.8 million moved into an irrevocable spendthrift trust with Dr. Christopher as sole manager. 3 days later, a bank envelope arrived at her apartment. Inside, the first monthly stipend, already scheduled to increase each year.
It's real. I have a life now, one they can't poison.
That afternoon, Dr. Christopher mailed the formal complaint to the State Bar. It named Malcolm Shaw, describing each false statement in the conservatorship petition. 3 days later, a certified letter landed on Malcolm Shaw's desk, a notice of investigation from the State Bar Disciplinary Board.
They're opening a full investigation. If this goes forward, my entire career is at risk.
We can still challenge the trust. Maria was coerced by that psychiatrist. File a motion to nullify the amendment.
The spendthrift trust is ironclad. Any challenge will be dismissed immediately and make things worse for all of us.
Robert slammed the office door so hard the frame rattled. Linda's heels echoed down the hall, but no one followed this time. The following week, the Vances filed an emergency motion to nullify the trust amendment, despite their own attorney's warning.
Motion denied. The trust is irrevocable. This court will not entertain further attempts to circumvent established law.
This isn't over. We'll find another way.
But there was no other way. The Spendthrift Trust was sealed. The bar complaint against Malcolm Shaw moved forward. The Vances had lost every legal avenue. 5 weeks later, the State Bar Panel convened. Malcolm Shaw sat alone at a wide table, the evidence stacked against him. The board read their findings, knowingly filing false statements, conspiracy to commit fraud upon the court, abuse of legal process. Effective immediately, Malcolm Shaw is disbarred from the practice of law in this state. The local paper ran the story 2 days later. The headline filled the front page, "Local attorney disbarred after falsifying court documents." In the article, the details of the Vance conservatorship scheme spilled into the open. Neighbors read it at their breakfast tables. The same afternoon, the Vances rode back from the grocery store in silence. People they'd known for decades crossed the street to avoid them. At home, Linda broke into tears while removing the newspaper from the porch. Robert stood in the doorway, his face unreadable.
Everything we built is gone. The church, the committees, the store reputation, all of it.
Malcolm Shaw's office was emptied by the end of the month. His nameplate was pried off the door, the suite listed for lease. The Vances faced no criminal charges. The bar discipline was the main penalty. But in a town where reputation mattered more than truth, they had already been convicted. A month after the disbarment, Maria began volunteering at a community mental health clinic. She sat with patients, listening to stories that echoed her own.
Dr. Christopher saw through the lies. Maybe I can be that person for someone else.
In weekly therapy, she learned to separate her parents' cruelty from her own worth. The work was slow, but the weight began to lift.
They tried to break me. Instead, they gave me a reason to fight for people like me.
She researched graduate programs, poring over admission requirements late into the night. Her personal statement laid bare the scheme and her resolve. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday morning, thick with orientation materials and a course catalog.
I'm in. I'm actually going to do this.
She enrolled that fall using the trust stipend to cover tuition and living expenses and began her coursework. She found herself in lectures on trauma-informed care, her own name absent from the case studies, but her story written into every lesson. The path forward was clear. She would earn her degree, and someday help others the same way she had been helped. The next 6 years blurred into textbooks, clinical rotations, and late nights at the university library. Every semester, the trust paid her growing stipend, covering tuition, rent, and sometimes a client's copay.
Almost there. Just one more semester.
In her final term, the trust notified her the stipend had reached its peak, enough for a comfortable life as she started her career. She ordered her cap and gown weeks before the ceremony. The package felt heavier than mere fabric.
I made it, despite everything.
She completed her internship, her supervisor signing off on her competency. The degree was within reach. On the morning of commencement, she stood before her mirror, diploma holder in hand. The campus filled with families and faculty, sunlight golden through the trees. 6 years after a locked ward, Maria Vance was about to walk across a stage. The announcer called her name, Maria Vance, Master of Clinical Social Work. She crossed the stage with steady steps. The dean shook her hand, pressed the diploma into her palm. The flash of a photographer lit the moment. In the audience, Dr. Christopher rose to his feet, applauding. His eyes glistened behind his glasses.
He's here. The man who read my trust and gave me a future.
After the ceremony, they found each other near the oak trees. She was still gripping her diploma.
I knew you would make it. The trust was just a tool. You built this yourself.
You didn't just defend a trust. You saw the truth when everyone else believed a lie. You saved my life.
You saved yourself, Maria. I just opened a door.
She hugged him, not as a patient to a doctor, but as a woman who had crossed a chasm and found someone still standing on the other side. That afternoon, Maria Vance held her diploma under a sky that held no threat and knew she had earned far more than a degree. 2 years after commencement, Dr. Christopher called Maria. He asked her to meet him at his office. She arrived to find him standing by the window, a leather folder in his hands.
It's time to retire the trust. You're ready. The money is yours now.
I don't know what to say.
He opened the folder and slid out a handwritten note. Use it for someone else someday when they need it. He explained the terms: full control, no restrictions, just that one request.
I promise. Every cent will honor what you started.
She signed the final transfer papers with a steady hand, her signature neat and certain. Afterward, they sat at a cafe. He handed her the original trust document, its pages worn from years of duty. That afternoon, Maria walked out of his office not as a beneficiary, but as a keeper of a promise. Within a year, she opened a private practice on the second floor of a brick building downtown. She specialized in young adults exploited by family, cases that mirrored her own. She kept the handwritten note in her desk drawer, pulling it out on difficult days. When a young woman sought help against a conservatorship attempt, Maria took the case without charge.
Someone did this for me. Now I do it for you.
The trust covered legal fees, therapy, and rent. Within months, the petition against her client was dismissed. That Sunday, Maria drove to the cemetery where Aunt Margaret rested, a small bouquet of yellow roses on the passenger seat. She knelt and touched the engraved name. The gift had done exactly what Margaret intended.
You knew, didn't you? You knew they might try this, and you made sure I had a way out.
She stood, brushed the grass from her knees, and walked back toward a life built on a single condition: use it for someone else. One afternoon, a young woman sat in her office, hands trembling, recounting the familiar pattern: family, money, betrayal. Maria listened, her own history shaping every question into a door she recognized.
This trust was built to stop exactly this. It will...
Within a week, the trust paid for an attorney. The same shield that had protected her now guarded someone else. The petition was dismissed. She walked into a morning she'd stopped believing in. Maria walked beside her, 2 survivors on a path carved by one woman's foresight. She didn't need to see the note. Its words lived in every case.
I didn't save you. You chose to walk through the door.
Sunlight caught the young woman's face, and for the first time, a real smile. The trust had closed its largest circle, from a locked ward to an open door. Use it for someone else, someday when they need it. The note had lived many lives, a promise, a shield, a key. Now it rested in a wooden frame on Maria's desk, beside a fading photograph of Aunt Margaret. Every morning she touched the glass before the first client arrived. Not as superstition, as a daily echo of the debt that was not hers to keep. The trust had once been a locked ward, then a shield, then a degree. It had been a courtroom, a verdict, a disgraced lawyer, and a ruined reputation. But in the end, it was a door held open for a stranger. That was the only condition that mattered, and the only one she would ever keep. As the sun set behind her, the note stayed on the desk, waiting for the next person who would need it.